Yeah, it was one of the earlier things that I wrote. It's actually right now is in the form of a feature-length screenplay, which has not been produced, hasn't been actualized in its telling form. It's on paper, but yeah, and it was honestly, I had a few really strong images and understandings of where the characters would be going, which is usually the first thing that's clear for me is who the people are.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew what they were up to, and I wanted the spirit of a child to be educating her ancestor. So the child passed when they were very young, and the ancestor is returning to her homeland to bury her mother. And this child teaches her traditions, this child who's passed. So part of that was mourning rites, burial rites, different ceremonies, ways of marking people's passing and that kind of thing. And so it was so alive in me, and I was so homesick. It was shortly after I moved to Toronto, actually, and I really longed for family, that it was really clear in me. So I just started writing it, and then I did the research after. So, which isn't always the way to go, but it worked out for me that time. So when I shared the script with my mom, she looked at the way that that the young spirit had spoken of burial and what had happened to her. And my mom said, who told you about this? And I just said, I was just imagining it. And she said, well, that's exactly what we used to do. We used to go to the other side of the river and we would be buried in the rock face. And that was your burial. It was just rock. And eventually your remains would return to the river, and then the whole cycle just kept going. So it was a really interesting thing to be, like a quite white presenting Indigenous person who really, really strongly relates to her Indigenous stories and tellings and ancestors. It was like having ancestors reach to me and say, yes, you should be doing this. It's just a really clear moment of being on the right path, which, another teaching I've since had is that sometimes that's what deja vu is. It indicates to you that someone who's looking after you is saying, yep, this, yep, keep doing that. So yeah, so that made me start to, I guess, come into my own as a writer, and be willing to even identify as a writer instead of as a failed actor.
That's really funny. That just reminded me, I think, of a conversation that we had 16 years ago, maybe. And I think that I remember you saying to me that it was really difficult for you to call yourself a writer.
Yeah.
Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, that was true for many years. Like I was several plays in before I started saying playwright, before I would say actor.